Last Epoch and Path of Exile 2 got me back into the genre, and today I want to talk about it and gush some praise and some critique. Let's get to it. It has been a long time since I committed to an ARPG. Diablo 2 was the last one I have played a long time ago. After that, Diablo never looked interesting. And I tried Path of Exile 1 back in 2016, 2017, and bounced off within few hours. After that, I have been looking at the genre with a skeptical lens. It just wasn't for me. All that changed with 1.0 release of Last Epoch. My friends played it, streamers I watched played it. Gameplay looked solid and buildcraft interesting, and the sweet call of hype got to me. With my increasing urge to spend money and acceptable price of around $30, I decided to take a risk and buy it. It only took few hours for me to start obsessing over the game. The structure of Last Epoch's campaign is pretty interesting. It is a time travel story where you will visit same locations in different epochs and see them in different conditions. I got to be honest, I didn't care much for the story of the game. It didn't have an interesting hook nor compelling characters. And maybe this type of storytelling just isn't for me. So I stopped talking to NPCs and started killing and looting. Combat in Last Epoch is fast-paced with skill spamming and frantic dying of enemies around you. At first, I didn't feel much for the combat, but found myself enjoying the buildcraft and the options the game gave me to build my character how I wanted. Combat enjoyment came with the levels and power. It became more engaging to get clear speed up, to move the enemies faster and faster. There are a few class options that later spread into subclasses, which give you a ton of variety and options to find your playstyle. Part of that is the passive skill tree, which is fairly simple and split into your main class and your subclass tree, both providing a number of significant options to push your build, but the more fun and interesting thing is the active skill system. The more you use your skills, they gain experience, and each, up to 5 different skills, have their own skill tree where you can allocate points to truly flesh out your build. My warlock at the end of the game had a skill that would trigger other skills, and I built a whole combo of effects that made my endgame grind a breeze. Crafting in Last Epoch is really intuitive and engaging. You could pick up a mediocre item from the ground and fiddle with shards and make it something great, or just usable for the time being. The glyphs, which are crafting support system, give you the option to dismantle items to gain shards, reroll stats, and give you a better chance to craft something good. Each item has a certain forging potential that is used when improving the item and has a chance to lower as you put more affix or suffix shards on it. The system is really easy to understand and felt really rewarding from the beginning to the end of the game. And you have enough of them to play with crafting as much as you like. It is really one of my favorite crafting systems in any game. I really love the campaign and the locations, encounters, and the mechanics that it is built upon. While it has room for improvement, it provides a good foundation for the future of the game. Endgame though? Endgame is where my excitement and interest in Last Epoch started to fall. Monoliths of Fate, the system for endgame grind, has at first an interesting proposition. Grind the maps, fill the stability bar on your screen by completing them, beat the boss, rinse and repeat. The Echoes are connected islands of different maps, each with its own unique modifiers, and something I really liked, associated rewards with it. If you would complete a map, you would get a bulk of specific item that map indicated. Now this was fun because I could plot my route amongst the maps and search for the things that I needed for my build. But since the majority of your build is complete after a few hours in endgame and there is not much to chase, constant repeating of maps falls short and I just started to lose interest. The endgame bosses were fun, beaten 3 of them, but you would just need to grind maps for too long to get to the good part, and then soon part ways with it again before you would reach the next boss. Last Epoch is really fun, and worth your time even if just for the campaign and to dabble into monoliths. I hope the 11th Hour Games, the small developer team that made it, continues to improve and add cool stuff to the game. I award Last Epoch with "Thank you for getting me back in" out of 10. Similar to Last Epoch, I was really not sold on the early access of Path of Exile 2. But there was not much to play at the time, and friend had an extra key, so only logical conclusion would be to get hooked, right? Path of Exile 2 campaign is a much slower and difficult experience. Currently there is only half of the campaign in the game, with acts 4, 5 and 6 coming later. Similar to Last Epoch, my interest in the campaign fell off pretty rapidly, and I just couldn't keep myself invested in the story and the world. Luckily, the world is gorgeous to look at, explore, and fight in. Combat in Path of Exile 2 is deliberate and meticulous. Enemies vary both in mechanics and design and can overwhelm you easily. On my first playthrough of the campaign, there were many bosses that I needed multiple attempts to beat. And the bosses, man, no two feel, look, or play the same. They are punishing and glorious. To reach the endgame, you will need to play campaign twice, and the second run is much easier, even though it still scales up. But because you already have the knowledge of the movesets and mechanics, you get through it more easily. And with awesome class options to choose from, getting back into the campaign from the start was always fun. I even got 3 characters to the endgame. Only half of the class options are currently in the game, but they provide a big range of options, enough subclasses, and more are coming. The skill system uses a variety of gems. Skill gems give you abilities to use, support gems modify those abilities in different ways. It is really flexible and deep. Things that surprised me is the fact that you could learn skills from other classes, swap weapons on the go, and even have a different paths on your passive skill tree, fully ramping up the build complexity of your character. And that passive skill tree, man, the sheer size of it is intimidating at first, but it's actually quite simple. You follow the path towards the big nodes that give you significant boost, or flip some aspect of how your character works. You just need to find some that seem cool and go with it. The skill tree is awesome, and I really love how it reminded me of Final Fantasy X. One of the campaign aspects that really didn't feel that great is the crafting. Early in the game, you just don't have enough of the resources to play with items too much, at least not on your first playthrough. See, your stash tab is bound to your account, not character, so when you start a second character, you already have your accumulated resources from the first run, and then you can get into the crafting more, but the first run is pretty dry. Since the drops are not that common, you just find yourself checking vendors for good items between each level when the shops refresh, instead of looking for them while going through the campaign. And even when you have the resources, the crafting feels more like a slots machine than a crafting system. You usually look for 1 or 2 things you need on an item and slap your currency and hope for the best. That is a bit better in the endgame, but we will get to that. And please, GGG, for the love of grind, add the sort function to the inventory. Spending time to arrange the items to fit a piece of loot in my inventory is not fun and adds nothing to the game. Path of Exile 2 Endgame brings a lot to the table. Higher difficulty progression with tier map stones, mechanics like breaches, rituals, delirium, expeditions, and some other. They all have their strengths and weaknesses, and some of them are a bit undertuned and need work. But that is the point of the early access, right? The traversal through the endgame is similar to Last Epoch's, connected maps on a big world. You choose a map, load a waystone, which you can spend resources on to give it modifiers that apply onto that map, and you go in. One thing that I really like here is the inclusion of towers on the map. When you finish one, you can put a precursor tablet, which will modify nearby maps with a mechanic relating to the type of the tablet, giving you the ability to chase mechanics that you find more fun to play. Breaches are, as my friends call it, high-octane gaming, where you just rush through the horde of enemies collecting chests to get resources to challenge the breach boss. Or rituals, where you would kill enemies in a magic circle to accumulate favor multiple times in a stage. The rituals would get progressively harder, but you would spend favor to buy gear or unique resource called omens. And Endgame has its own skill tree, or more like a challenge tree. You finish certain activities to then raise the difficulty of that activity for different beneficial modifiers and better rewards in the future. There has been a lot of talk about the difficulty of the endgame, but I found it tuned just about right. If we count out the rare moment where I died to some random effect that was not properly telegraphed, or when my crossbow just stops shooting. Overall, I liked the invisible ceiling I would hit and then was forced to get better gear, respec an aspect of my character, or just focus more on the game and adapt my playstyle to die less. So, one part that I have mixed feelings about. I mentioned crafting in the campaign part, so I want to expand on the topic a bit more, the rewards and the crafting. I feel like the reward and crafting in general are spread too much apart. What do I mean by that? The amount of quality items that you get and the sheer randomness of rolls on items just makes overcoming challenges a bitter thing. Scenario. You get a drop of tier 4 or tier 5 item, you identify it and it rolls stats that you do not want. Then when you chaos it, forcing it to change random stat into another, item loses the tier and you can roll a lower tier of its tier that you found it in. Or a friend realized that the wands with plus 5 or 6 lightning skill level are worth something, so he bought the essences of lightning and rolled about 30 of them, only to see the skill levels that few times and never above the plus 3. I understand the principle of low loot and work for it, but here is the crux of the problem. While I'm grinding the endgame, I am not looking forward to the loot except an occasional stellar amulet. I am looking for the currency that I'm going to use to buy good items on the market, and that just doesn't feel right. I would love to craft my own gear more often and consistent. And don't get me wrong, it's not like I think this is an irredeemable piece of junk that I hate. I love when I drop an Exile on a jewel or a piece of gear and it rolls something valuable for me to sell or to use. It is just too rare of an occasion. Overall, I love this game. I have 3 characters in the endgame and started 4th with a friend. I think I'm somewhere close to 200 hours in, and when the economy refreshes, I will be back once again. Grinding gear games have released a beast on the loose that will be grinding our time for years. And don't forget, this game will be free on release. I award Path of Exile 2 with injecting coffee into my brain to grind out of 10. So, if you stuck with me till here, thank you, and if I may ask you to consider to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and give me your opinions about these 2 fantastic games down in the comments. Thank you for watching.